Hey guys, welcome back to Thriving in Love podcast, the podcast that challenges the status quo so couples can thrive as their most authentic selves. Today on the show, we have Karenna. She is a public speaker, a women's coach, and a somatic practitioner. Karenna, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. I found your Instagram and I just felt a strong body chills. Yes, like this is the content that we need today on this new phase, I would like to say, of feminism, where we're not just these super powerful independent women that can take over and do whatever we want. Yes. And we are also allowed to be in our soft feminine flow and receive the love and abundance that we are here to receive. So I'm excited to dive into all of this with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sana, for having me. I'm so excited talking to this conversation. Just even talking like the duality of like being a strong, badass woman and what does it look like to be soft and feminine and receiving and being led in relationship and what does that look like? I mean, there's just so much yumminess. And that was a lesson I definitely had to learn and learn how to be in that. So excited.
Yes, if you don't mind, I would love to hear about your journey and like how you got started in this world and what was your personal journey like?
Okay, so back maybe like 10 plus years ago, I was sitting on the couch with my best friend and we came across the Enneagram. Have you heard of the Enneagram? It's a
Yes.
personality test that kind of it takes a look into your deeper, like based off how you were raised, how you are. I mean, it was just all these things. And I was just sitting on the couch with her. I was like absolutely mind blown. I was like, what? Like, what? And so as the Enneagram, for anyone that's listening, I was an Enneagram 2, which is the helper, the lover, the giver. And I remember finding this one piece out and I was like, wait, what? There's no way. And basically what I learned about the helper, the lover, and the giver is like, we love to give, right? We love to be there for other people. We put other people first. It's like, that's our love language in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I learned that it was actually very selfish of me because it was what I used to help me avoid certain parts within myself. And I was like, it was kind of like a slap in the face at the time. But then I was also like, oh, there is something here that I need to learn more about myself. And what does that actually look like? And so that sent me off in this crazy healing journey. And I want to say it started with like so much awareness, right? Like learning about me. Who am I? Why are these parts of me like? And then where I got to a place where I was super, super self-aware. I was like, I knew why I was doing the things that I was doing. When you get to this place and you're like, I get it. Like, I know where this is coming from, but how do I actually shift that? And how do I actually change that? That's when I came across somatics, which somatics is basically body-based therapy. Soma stands for the living body. So I did my trauma-informed certification and mind blown, absolutely mind blown. I was like, oh, so this is how I work through things.
Yes.
And so what it was like really learning how to be with every single part within myself, learning how to, parts work was super transformative too. Learning how to be with every part of myself, learning how to give that part what it needed, what it wanted, and allowing that part to fully express itself, right? So like giving it the space to be fully heard, seen, and loved in the way that I wanted. But for someone that used to put all these people before herself, like expressing myself in that way or creating that kind of relationship within myself was like awkward and uncomfortable and like, what?
Yeah.
So I started peeling a lot of layers of like finding who I was, because I started asking myself the question, I'm like, who am I when I'm not there for everyone else? Like, who am I when I'm not helping someone, or like when I'm at a party and I don't offer to like start doing things for everyone else? Like, who am I in that moment? And
oh my gosh, so relatable.
like starting to figure that out. And then the rest is just continue to grow on each other. And like, honestly, creating a relationship with myself was the number one thing. And that's what I started coaching on, was how can everyone just build a better relationship with themselves? Like truly get to know themselves. And then it's just built on from there. But that's a little bit about myself.
That's amazing and magical and so courageous, right? So I think like that's the biggest thing that stops so many of us, is that it's so easy to intellectualize things once we understand like what happened, why it happened. But then we forget that it's so important. Again, what you said is like creating that space to express the feelings, which I think is truly like that missing piece to actually releasing it from our bodies and like feeling free of what happened. And like, I guess when you work with your clients, do you feel like this is stuff that they know like innately? Like how do we know as women that this is what we need versus like in this society, we're so conditioned to think that all of the answers that we need are found on Google or outside of us or with people that are know more than us, have more, credentials, etc. So like what was your experience like detaching from wanting to learn more externally versus listening to what your body needed in the moment?
Yeah, wow, this is such a beautiful question and something that I've thought about often, just because now that I've learned so much about the nervous system, when I've learned so much about the body, like it truly, like the body has so much wisdom, right? I think we get caught up in like logically thinking about everything. And then we're also filtering through our subconscious mind based on past experiences, who raised us. So it makes sense why we don't have this sense of connection to our bodies, right? And what that actually looks like. And now that I've learned about it, I'm like, it's there for all of us and it's almost natural to us. The only thing that kind of kept us from that is just our cultures, who we were raised by, our parents, every bit of data point or information we've ever absorbed,
capitalism,
everything has kind of honestly created like this gray, like foggy thing in between our body knowledge and like body intelligence
ancient
that we're
wisdom.
literally. And I think back to some of the somatic practices that are so helpful for me look like shaking out my entire body, moving in the craziest way. Like when I started to tap into expressing anger so for someone that is a people pleaser, suppresses emotions, anger was like quote unquote bad. I looked at it as like, that's a bad thing. Like I can't express anger. I can't be mad. What do you mean? Once I learned how to tap into rage and like build that deep relationship with rage, I was like, it unlocked something within me. But what I realized was like all these emotions, we categorize them because we want to protect ourselves or manage the experience. But at the end of the day, they just want to be expressed and then they'll move on. We just get so attached to the experience versus like, if we just process and do the emotion, it will move by so much faster. In my eyes, I'm a high achiever and I've had to work a lot on not doing too much. But I think about this too. I was like, wow, it's actually really damn productive if we can get to a place of expressing our emotions so much more quicker and we can move on and
quantumly. Literally
literally
quantum. Like, and I don't know about you, but like the experience is insane from like not only how you feel, of course, like that's huge, but then you're literally raising the vibration of who you are and your confidence and your ability to like know who you are better. So you attract with more clarity, confidence, you're able to manifest things easier and more quickly because you don't have those like energetic blocks that are like stopping you from attracting what you want.
Yes. And you can feel it. Like there's this thing that like when you like release and let go, there's so much more space for the yumminess that we all want to feel, right? Like we want to feel, the key to manifestation, the way that I've always practiced it and believe it, it's be, do, have. So you got to be the thing in order to do the thing and in order to receive the thing. And so people get caught up in like, but I'm thinking my way there, but you really want to feel the way you want to feel. And part of that secret sauce is learning how to be with the emotions, be unattached, and quantum leap to what you were saying to where you want to go. But we're missing that little piece of the puzzle of like, we have to be with this too. We can't just skip over this part. It's actually important and productive and supportive to be with this too.
I agree. And sometimes we may receive what we're manifesting without doing that important part, but it's not sustainable and it's not going to stick. And we may sabotage it. Like we may, not feel worthy of having it because we haven't done the emotional work that we needed to do to become the person that can hold what we truly desire in a sustainable way.
Ooh,
So
I'd love to ask you. Yeah, I'd love to ask you, can you expand on that a little bit? Because that is so juicy for people to understand. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so for me, it's like, I'm manifesting a better relationship with my husband, right? But am I
Mm,
able to create the space within myself that has the expansiveness of being worthy of the love that I am craving from him? So sometimes he'll
mm,
like just shower me with the love that I'm like asking for, and I'm like, and it's working, but then I will sabotage it by feeling like, for instance, he offered to pay for like our bills so that I can tap more into my creativity and my full expression of self. But I got so triggered and I was just like, I'm an independent woman. I don't need you to do this. I got this, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't even able to receive it. And like, even if
mm.
I did temporarily, I'm just constantly figuring out a way to like make more money so that I don't need it, when in reality, the universe is gifting me with this incredible thing that I've been asking for so long, but I'm not even able to hold it and receive it because I don't feel
Mm.
worthy of it.
Yeah, that's such a great example. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's such
Yeah.
an important piece to share. Like I was talking to a friend literally 2 days ago about this, but in a different way. She's been being very successful in her business, and
Mm-hmm.
the amount of money that is coming into her checking account, she doesn't even feel like it's real. She's just
Yeah.
like, there's no part of her that can like fully receive the fact that it's happening. Like the energetics of like, okay, now you have X amount of money in your bank account. And she was talking about like, I'm like disconnected from it. It's like I'm not fully
Wow.
receiving it. Like I can't even look at it and be like, ooh, what does that look like? And I told
Mm.
her the same thing. I was like, you got to get your nervous system on board with every level of success that you want. And to you too, like, it's like you got to get your nervous system on board with every part of success or love, like deep, deep love. Like
All
that's
of it,
another
right?
thing. Like
Money, men,
men
all
and
of
all the
it.
things. And relationships are such a beautiful place to practice that because
Yeah.
we so badly want to be deeply loved and seen and held and supported. But we have all these parts of us that come up in that. But then there's just like these pieces of us that we get to dive in more. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's so cool. Thank you for saying that.
No, thank you for sharing that about your friend too. That I love when it connects not just with your relationship, but also with business, because I
Yep.
do believe that it's the same energy that, like, we're the feminine, everything internal is what's happening with our emotions and our energy, etc. And what we're reflecting back to us is that divine masculine energy. That divine masculine energy is
Mm,
basically like all of the things that you're receiving from the business to the money to the experiences to your way of life. That's like
mm,
God wanting to give you, right? In the matter of it is through the money and the men, but it's all God giving to his goddess.
yeah.
So,
Uh,
yeah.
isn't that just the best? Like when you hear that, right? You're like, ooh, I really want to feel that, experience that. There's like so much, like, I like to use the word juicy a lot and
Mhm.
yumminess because it's so
It
rich
is.
energy,
Yeah.
like yummy rich energy.
I love that you say that because I've been really tapping into pleasure and like allowing myself
Mm,
to receive pleasure and give myself pleasure and remember that like pleasure can come in so many different ways. And it's not just like sex with my husband, but also just like my self pleasure, my indulgence, my like, like the more I create space to receive pleasure in more ways, then the universe can like open up channels to give me
more
blessings in
pleasure.
more ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that for you.
No, I actually want to talk though about like how did you feel like in your relationships? Did you have a relationship? Are
Yes,
you in a relationship right now?
I am.
Have you been feeling the changes in your relationship the more you go into your own journey?
Oh my gosh. So I attracted him. So him and I have been together for like 2.5 years, and I feel like I show up so fully expressed in every single way. I think that's the biggest thing. Like
That's
for me,
amazing.
dating before, like, was what I was talking about. Like I would think 100% about them. Like, what do you want? What do you need? Like when we talk about sex, same thing. It was like, in the bedroom, I had completely lost disconnect of like, what do I want? What do I need? Like I was constantly thinking about like, okay, I got to make you happy in the bedroom. But that same underlining story was like that in all my relationships. And I lost myself. I didn't know how to bring
Yeah.
myself to a part of that. And so once I started doing this work, I've just seen that one, how do I invite him in for more to get to know me more? You know, like how can I also invite him into my experience and create the safety for him to invite me into his experience? So we're both living fully expressed. The way that we were just on another podcast together, and the way that we like to say is that we're very independent. We're doing life independently, but we played on the same team, right? Like it's like the two of us are learning how to fully be in our passions, our unique desires and love, and learning how to give that to each other and expressing that. But we're always coming back. We're always doing it together, right? We're in union to that. So I really take that to one, it started with me, you know, it started with me learning how to feel safe with myself, you know, feel comfortable enough to honor my wants and likes and desires, feeling comfortable, learning what a full body yes was, what a full body no was, you know, learning like what my internal boundaries were, no matter what everyone else's internal boundaries were. It was like, it didn't matter. It was like, what are my needs? What does that look like? What do my boundaries look like? And creating this like deep self inner trust. And by doing so, I was able to bring that into the relationship, and it has created such a beautiful container.
That's so beautiful and powerful. As a former people pleaser, as a giver, like what was that process like going from someone who, I don't know about you, but like I remember cringing at listening to myself over others. And it was just
Oh my
so
God, it was
hard.
awful. Yeah, get that. I get that. Like I used to think about, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I don't do this as much anymore, but like if I would ask for something, I would replay the conversation in my head over and over again. Like, did I ask too much? Was I not supposed to ask that? Was it the wrong timing? Like, did I say it the right way? Could I have softened it up a little bit? Like, what could I have done to like make this quote unquote more acceptable by the other person versus
Isn't
just
that
owning?
crazy?
Yeah.
So much energy.
So much
But
energy. It's crazy.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And then what was like with your partner, like when you began your journey at first, were they scared or was he like, you know, worried at all? Or was he just like super supportive and like rooting for you? Like,
Yeah, no, I think since I came into that relationship, so you caught me in this relationship at a point where I was like, I'm going to own what I want no matter what, whether he accepts it or not. Like I was okay with that,
so
right?
powerful.
You know,
Oh,
like I was okay that if I show up in this relationship as fully myself and he just chooses not to be in this relationship, I'm cool with that. Like I'm good. I had to get really comfortable with that. And that's actually one of the blessings that I feel in my relationship because I still have full trust that I'm choosing to be in this for me, not for him. And I also have full trust that he's choosing to be in this relationship for him, not for me. And we're actively choosing. And I also fully trust that if something happens, who knows, you know, I can evolve and to so many different ways that we'll constantly continue to put ourselves, but as long as we're putting ourselves and choosing us, then we'll be together. But if something happens where we no longer meet each other's needs or wants, I'm truly, I understand that. And I would want nothing more for him. But that's how I had to enter into this when I was dating him. I was so in this place of like, I'm going to be me. You love me, you choose to be here, and I'm actively choosing this because I like this, then I'm going to stay. But for a people pleaser, that's really, really hard because all I think about or all I want is to make sure that the other person loves me, accepts me, chooses me, isn't upset with me, or I don't create conflict with them. And so that's how I started this relationship, and it's been really supportive.
That is magical and so important because I feel like if you didn't do that work ahead of time, you probably wouldn't be able to attract a man who is so empowered in his own purpose and knows what he wants and has the clarity and the confidence and that connection with his own self. Because from like, I do relationship coaching and I see that like, I think the key to having a successful relationship as a feminine, like as a sacred feminine woman who is devoted to her own truth and her own journey is to literally, you can't settle for a guy who has no direction and purpose in life. Like that's the universe that's going to bring people into your life and test you and be like, are you really into your power? And what are you going to settle for? Right. So like, I don't think, again, it goes back to the things that we can hold. I don't think you would have been able to hold a man like that if you didn't actually fully embody the lessons that you learned to
Mm-hmm.
become this strong sense of self.
Totally. And I'll say this, like, as much as like I learned that or I had this perspective, every single new day in the relationship, I had to play game. It was time for me to
Mm.
show up and actually practice everything that I worked on, right? So like
What was that like?
it triggering, hard, I was creating capacity for it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's one thing for you to create your own capacity and yourself, but when you get into a relationship, that's when all your shit comes up, it's like an ongoing mirror. You're putting two different people with different worlds in the same places, so it was triggering. It was hard. And at the same time, I knew I was like, if I keep showing up in the way that I want to show up, this is going to be the thing, or it's not going to be the thing, and it's okay. But it was hard. It wasn't necessarily easy. It was
No.
triggering.
Yeah.
But I was there for that, because we can heal so much in relationship. Like I was there for that. I was like, all right, I'm ready to create capacity to hold the kind of relationship I want, but I gotta play game, I gotta play ball
Yeah.
to do that.
Do you have like an example of like early on in your relationship of when you may have had to like really step up and embody this person that you have
Mm,
become? And did you have any like tension with your partner to stand in integrity with who you are with and like face that? I think like when we talk about these situations, I think it can really help people who are so scared to speak their truth and use their voice in relationships to see someone
yeah.
else do it and be like,
Yeah.
oh, they made it through. I could do it too.
Yeah, no, I think that's so fair. I look back to the time where we were dating because I feel like dating was it's such a raw season of early relationship. It's such a, not to say that I'm not constantly doing this again in my relationship, but I always feel like this is where I had to show up. So like just as much as being honest about my feelings with him, right? Like what I wanted, what I didn't wanted, or, like if I ever felt like he wasn't communicating the way that I wanted him to communicate, I'd be like, hey, this is what's coming
Yeah.
up for me. This is what I invited that. Cause I mean, the kind of relationship that I was really craving was one that I felt safe to fully express myself in all ways, right? Without like dumping on him, but I really wanted to let him know into my experience. I wanted him to know what's okay, what's not okay. And so, if something felt off early on in dating, or maybe he didn't make a date when I really wanted to go on a date, I would be like, hey, like I was really looking forward to seeing you. And
Yeah.
I would have loved to see you this last weekend. Like I didn't hold back on that. Like I was just
Hmm.
direct, I was honest about that. And that's how I stepped into that. Now, was it cringy? Yeah. Cause I would have been like, am I being too much? Am I going to push him away? What if he gets annoyed by me? What if I'm just saying too much about my experience? What if he thinks I'm dramatic? Like, I don't want that to happen. But I was like, fuck it. Like, this is my truth in this moment. And
Hmm.
something doesn't feel off. And I'm almost like inviting him, or I'm calling him up in the way that I need to be met. And if he meets me, beautiful. If he didn't, then I got my answer too.
Yeah. And then you get to choose again, going back to that
Yeah.
active choice.
Yes.
Do I stay or do I go? Right. And I think that
Exactly.
that is what really helped me, where it's like, I was married before I started any of this work. Right. So I was just like, did I marry the wrong person now
Yeah.
that I'm
How
like
was that?
growing? Oh my God. It was, well, we lived in our own apartments because
Okay.
I needed to like figure out what was happening to me as I was going through my dark night of the soul. And he didn't believe in spirituality at all. And I had to make a choice. Like, do I choose my spiritual evolution or do I choose to stay comfortable
Wow.
here in this relationship? And it was the hardest choice I've ever had to make because I had severe abandonment wounds and severe like childhood trauma of like all this stuff. But I had to, when you get that call, you can't like not listen because the universe will take it, everything in your reality away, right? Like I heard the whisper, I ignored it. I heard the louder voice, I ignored it. I was comfortable, I was very happy. And then,
Yeah.
like we were just fighting so much more. And it just became like
Mm.
the the need for freedom became bigger than my crave for love. And that's when I knew that I had to figure out what was going on because I
Wow.
didn't want us to lose the love that we had. but I also needed to find self-love in order to take our relationship into deeper realms of intimacy.
Yeah, isn't it wild when it like comes knocking at your door and you're like, I'm not ready to open the damn door. Like, I'm not ready to open this damn door. Can you come back in like a few years, maybe? Like, it might be a better situation then. And you're like, no, now I'm going to start pounding at the door. And you're like, fuck. Sure.
Yeah, like literally tear the door down and be like, you got no other choice but to like freaking sit here and listen.
Yeah. And that's how I just feel like it all just comes together, like no matter what, you know, like I feel like even with people that are listening to this, like maybe you're getting these whispers to start doing this work, but eventually it gets to a point where you just cannot not listen, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what rock bottom is, right? And I don't think you can like do the transformation if you feel like there's something else, because it's not easy. Like it's gruesome work, right? Like facing our darkest shadows, facing the reality of who we actually are versus this like fantasy that we have of ourselves. Oh, I'm so giving. I'm so open-hearted. I'm such a perfect little person that like gives. I'm such a people pleaser. Why don't people love me?
Time.
Victim. And when you no longer have the option to play victim is when you just have no other choice but to start facing all of it. Right? Like, do you feel like you had like a rock bottom moment, or were you just like, you know what, I need to do this work?
I mean, back when like 10 years ago, yes. And then for me, it also started with like an eating disorder. So like I had an eating disorder, and that was probably like my loudest thing. I feel like my body has been my like temple or like my vessel to my healing in a lot of ways. But it was that like when I was struggling with eating disorder and the body dysmorphia, it just got so loud. I was so tired. I think that was the biggest thing. I was like, I'm tired of fighting these parts within me. Like, I'm tired. Like, I need to figure out what they need, what they want, and like how to like make them feel, how to make them feel safe in the way that they wanted. But that was one of my like low bottom moments. And I got really, really curious because I was like, I just don't want to live like this anymore.
Yeah. And what were the first steps that you took? Like, how did you begin from that rock bottom place?
Oh my gosh. You know, what you'll know about me is like, I'm not scared to dive all in, you know, like I'm not a Scorpio. I'm a Libra, surprisingly.
Wait, that's fascinating because I'm a Libra rising. So
really, I'm like Libra, Virgo. Like I'm a lot of Libra and a little bit of Virgo.
Libra moon as well. I have a lot of Libra.
I love that. I know. I was like, now I want you guys on my podcast because I love you.
Me too. That's why I invited you.
Yeah, thank you. How did that start? I am someone that goes all in, you know, and I think when I was going all in, like I almost like was super early to my healing journey to like my friend group, for example. Like no one was talking about the things I was talking about. No one was like going to breath work and meditation and trying to find themselves yet. Like they just thought what I was doing was very woo. Like I was like 5 years ahead of everyone else. So I did it on my own, you know, like I started just asking questions. I remember hiring a coach and I was like, I'm committed to this container because I need this kind of a container to support me in it. One, because what I've learned about myself is like, I'm such a high achiever and like wanting to be successful that I can be the person that's be like, well, my success is more important than healing, you know? So I was like, I need to focus on being my work, not on me. What do you mean? Like, that's not a thing. So I created the container and I made sure I invested in a container and I was like, I'm going to show up every single week. I'm going to be with my thoughts. I'm going to be with the uncomfortability. I'm going to say the things that I'm so scared for other people to hear, right?
Yeah.
Those types of language, like those types of thoughts. And I was like, I'm going to say them out loud. I'm going to start processing them. I'm going to start doing the uncomfortable. And for something that was really helpful for me with my eating disorder was learning intuitive eating, which was like basically rewiring everything that I did with food. Because for me, everything with food was like a calorie, a macro, you know, it was like a structure of like, I should eat like this or I should eat like that. So like really breaking that down, which when I see like I was very my masculine, like when you talk about like masculine energy, like it's so rigid, so logical, it's so bold, it's so direct. There's no room for flow. And I would say that that running theme of learning how to support the healthy masculine, like we need structure, right? To hold for feminine flow, but
Yeah.
also like getting really comfortable in the feminine. So later on in my journey, from someone that was in their masculine all the time, I experienced being super feminine, and I was like in my flow. I'm like, I'm not going to do
Yeah.
anything. How do I feel today? Like, I feel like crying. I'm going to cry today. Like, but I needed
Yeah.
to experience that to know what it was to also embody that part of my identity, because I didn't
Yeah.
know that. And something that I've witnessed with myself, I don't know if it's the same for you. Like, I feel like with healing, it's almost like a pendulum swing. We're usually on one far side of it. And we need, in order to learn the benefits and the strengths of the other one, we need to swing all the way to the other side, experience
And
it, and
yep.
heal with it. But then we're also like, we got to bounce back because now we got to integrate it and like balance it. And so,
Balance. Yeah. That's
so
exactly
yeah.
what happened to me. I went all the way to the other side. And when I was living in my own apartment in New York, I would just literally spend all day laying in grass in Central Park and just staring at the sky and talking to God. And I was just like, I don't care. Like what I look like, I don't care what I'm doing. I had a business at the time
Oh
that
man,
I
I did the
basically
same thing.
abandoned.
I did the same thing, but I did it at the beach. And I was like, I was owning my like raw, vulnerable, like, I don't know what I look like, no makeup, like
Yeah, no
just
makeup.
flowy. Like I could just sit on the sun and the beach all day. I feel that.
Yeah, it was fucking magical. I loved it.
Yeah. And for someone that like, I was like a high achieving and in my masculine in a
Same.
lot of ways, I was like,
Yeah.
learning how to soak in that was just so important.
Yeah.
And once I started soaking in it, I was like, damn, where the fuck have I been? I'm like, this is so nice.
Exactly, right? And also,
Mm-hmm.
like, how much do we allow our ego to override that inner feeling of wanting to be, wanting to rest, right? So, like, I don't know about you, but like, the more I was accepting of my feminine, easier my relationship became with my husband. Like, it was literally instantaneous. The more I accepted parts of me, the easier it was easier to connect with him, connect with
Mm-hmm.
others, connect, like accept others as they are. And like, I think people pleasers don't realize that there's a toxic trait of being a people pleaser where you're trying to like control and manipulate the people around you in a way. And it's like, you think you're trying to make people happy, but in reality, you're just not meeting them where they are at and where they need to be seen because you're
Ooh.
uncomfortable with that. So for me, that was a huge lesson of like just learning how to be with people where they're at, but I can't until I'm ready to sit with myself and be with myself where I'm at.
Yeah, I feel that that was a huge lesson for me too. And it was because when I learned that I wanted to be met where I was at, I was like, I do this so I help a lot of people with like difficult conversations, navigating difficult conversations in relationship. And there's this thing in relationship, like once I saw this for myself, I was like, I'm just trying to be heard, met, and seen. I had this aha moment of like, oh, the other person I'm in relationship also wants to just be met, heard, and seen, not
Isn't that an
controlled or
expansive
changed
moment?
or fixed. Oh my God, yeah. And you're just like, duh, like they're human, I'm human. I'm asking to be loved, seen, and heard and met in my ways. They're asking to be heard, met, and seen. And so learning how to meet someone instead of how you think they want to be met or what
Mm-hmm.
you think they need to be met, right? Because we can try and like almost like not manipulate, but try and see like, oh, you're here. I think you want to go here. So I'm going to meet you over here and like guide you here. And it's like, no, 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 no. They want to be met like right here.
Yeah.
And they get to choose when they want to
Mm.
be met in a different way, not me choosing for them, just meeting them where they want to, they choose and they have a choice and that's okay.
And I think you can't even get them to move unless you meet them because then you're trying to control them versus you can't control people into healing. You love them into healing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for my husband, like for the longest time, I was just like, I'm doing all this work. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Like, why aren't you doing anything? You don't care about growth. You're so comfortable in your fixed mindset, blah, 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 blah. When in reality, it's like, well, how is he, like, imagine a kid like I think conscious parenting is huge right now for a reason because like if you're trying to like scold and force and coerce your child into being a version of what you want that's not good parenting, right? That's all the trauma that we're all like unlearning and unprogramming and
Literally
figuring
trying to
out.
fix. We're all trying to work through right now.
And I realize it's the wounded mother, like the wounded maiden within
Mm.
us that tries to like think, oh, we're so like mighty and we know better, and like we're just here to like move you into your full potential. Oh, blah blah. When in reality, it's like, well, like you gotta love them, you gotta accept them, you gotta allow them to grow and flourish on their own. And I think like I learned how to be a mom without having kids through this whole journey and experience. And I've never said that out loud. I don't want people to come at me and be like, you don't know what it's like to be a mother. And I'm like, oh yes, I know. I don't know what it's like to be a mother, but
It's still, you know, the things that we can, I don't have kids either, you know, and I think about this for myself, you know, I'm like, oh, like, I can't wait to put these things into practice. Like, yes, is it going to be a new stage, a new room that I've never played in, you know, I've never been familiar with, but I'm going to be like,
yeah.
how can I bring these skills in too? Because they want it too, you know?
I don't know if you feel this in your creativity and in your business, where I feel like there's so much of like a beautiful like container of that juiciness, yumminess, receiving energy, downloads, and creating, but then also that practice of detaching from the outcome, right? It's kind of like having a child where like you have to like hope for the best, but also ultimately let them go fly on their own. And that's how it is with creative projects too. And not again say that it's the same thing, but it's just so
It,
similar to get our womb energy.
yeah, no, I literally just had that. I had someone on my podcast earlier, and that's what we talked about. And I asked her, I was like,
Mm.
what can, because she's a mom of four, you know, so this is someone who has moms and kids and
Thank
stuff,
God.
and she, you know, like it ain't me. And I asked her, I was like, you know, how do you lean into that? And she's like, well, I realize that they're also having their human experience and like they need to experience life.
Yeah.
And as much as I want to catch them every single time or correct them, like that's not going to help them build the muscle to be able to do that on their own.
Yeah.
And I think something that's been super important for me recently in business or just like in relationships is learning how to trust my own human experience, like the decisions that I make and what does that look like, you know, or what I choose, right? Like what I choose in relationship, like actually trusting that, not just going to a coach all the time and saying like, hey, do you think I'm making the right decision?
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like trusting that. And we get to build that on ourselves when we're given permission to have our own human experience. And like when we do that for other people, they're also learning how to build this internal self-trust of their own.
Mm-hmm. And allowing yourself to make mistakes will also allow
Totally.
you to let others make mistakes, right? And like I
Mm-hmm.
learned so much from my mistakes. I love making mistakes. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna probably have a quantum leap after this mistake. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and why rob someone of that lesson? That's so
Totally.
selfish.
And this all goes back to like what your podcast is about and like the relationship you have with yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
the more that we create capacity for ourselves to do
Mm-hmm.
this, right? To crave these parts of us to be expressed in the ways that we're asking for, or create capacity for making mistakes and being okay with them, the
Yeah.
more we give permission to others. It's almost like when we give the messy permission to ourselves, we're also giving the messy permission to others just energetically because
Mm.
we've learned how to navigate within us. It always starts back with us. It's so much
Yeah.
easier with us. And it just like plays out in
Ripple.
your future relationships or the
Mm-hmm.
people around you. They start to receive all the work that you're doing on yourself because you have this deeper level of self-love and compassion and grace for yourself. And, you know, people just want that grace. They just want to be loved and seen and held in that too.
I think it really speaks to like leadership skills too. So like
Mm-hmm.
running a team and becoming a better leader, having more emotional intelligence, having more emotional maturity during meetings with investors. Like when we talk about wanting to be high achieving, I think an incredibly crucial part of it is this healing journey if you actually want to be a good leader in business, in life, as like a businesswoman, a creative entrepreneur, whatever journey you take.
Mm-hmm.
Like I it just is only going to set you up for success in all things, not just
Yeah.
relationships. And that's why like I love this podcast, but I do like kind of struggle sometimes because it's like so much of it is about like not just marriage. It's so much more. It's so much more than just like your relationship with your partner. It's reflective in every single thing that you do and touch.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this because I started like this too, like all about relationships, and I always struggled with that. And that's why now I talk about like helping people with difficult conversations in all relationships, platonic, professional, and
Mm,
romantic. Because in my eyes, I'm like, they're all the same.
yeah.
They are. Like the way that you show up in one is traditionally going to help you support you in the other, right?
Hmm.
And but, I think people look at romantic relationships as like this sacred space, it's like very intimate and sacred. And so it is beautiful that you can start here and you can also invest all of that work into these other arenas, other places that you are also in relationship with.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So tell me about your podcast. Tell me about what you have going
Yeah.
on in your world.
Yeah. So I've been coaching for 4 years, as I said that, and now I'm transitioning into being like more of a professional speaker. So that's really
Oh.
my jam for this year. Speaking and talking about things just like this or being on panels because I love it. And then I have
Mhm.
my own podcast. It's called the Fully Expressed Podcast, where it's all about like fully expressing yourself in life, relationships, and business. That's what I do. And you can find me on Instagram at I am Karenna Soto. But this has been so lovely.
Yeah, it's been so refreshing and so nice to talk to someone who like understands the full spectrum of why we do what we do and why we went through what we went through and like how it can exponentially make our lives better as women in their fullest expression of self so that we can not only thrive in relationships but in life and everything and beyond. Connecting with
Mm.
Mother Nature and just being in our energy.
Yeah, love it. I love it so
Well,
much.
all right, I'm going to drop your links below. If anybody wants to connect with Karenna, please look at the links below so you can find her Instagram, her podcast, and all of the yummy juiciness that she has to offer you guys. Thanks for tuning in.